Hello, welcome to the morning news. Our top story today takes us to Havana. In the next few hours, the Colombian peace talks will resume. There are hopes for a deal to be reached soon between the government and the FARC rebels. A FARC unilateral ceasefire has come into effect, and the government has agreed to de-escalate its military actions against the rebels. This time around, United Nations experts will attend the negotiations that began November 2012, aimed at ending a 54-year conflict that has left 220,000 people dead and millions affected. Our correspondent in Colombia, Natalia Margarita, explains how further the peace talks have advanced than any previous negotiations of this kind.
A day after a new legislative period was inaugurated, Colombia's Senate held a plenary session in which the current peace negotiation with the FARC was debated, an opportunity to clarify doubts and contest the peace process adversaries.
It's necessary to point out that during the years of the peace process, either for the FARC ceasefire or due to other circumstances, there have been improvements in some war zones. For instance, the rates of forcible displacement have decreased.
The two leading figures of the government's team in Havana took part in the debate, in which the unprecedented opportunity that Colombia is facing in the wake of the peace process was highlighted.
A peace agreement is an opportunity that would allow to push Colombia towards a much more equitable nation, much more fair, with fair politics that functions better and brings to the rural areas conditions are not as undignified as the current ones.
The most unexpected moment came when fierce opponent to the peace process, Álvaro Uribe, admitted some sort of relief after hearing de la Calle's speech. Colombia's High Commissioner for Peace also took the opportunity
We agreed to expedite in Havana. What that means is that we are changing the negotiation method. We are going to set a work plan with goals that we are going to accelerate the discussion of a definitive ceasefire. In the meantime, we're going to de-escalate the conflict in Colombia.
Meanwhile, social organizations have inaugurated the National Encounter for Peace, an initiative aimed to actively engage civil society in the discussion and construction of peace.
We call upon the government to start tuning now with the social and political changes that are needed, so that peace doesn't end up being just a negotiation accord with the guerrillas, but also that together with the social movement, with the organized society, we start taking steps towards a much democratic, balanced and fair country.
Within the National Encounter for Peace, social organizations and leaders have ratified their demand of a bilateral ceasefire, as well as the necessity of a peace negotiation with the second largest guerrilla, the ELN. Natalia Margarita, Telesur, Bogotá, Colombia.
We go to Mexico. The high-level complexity in the escape of the world's most powerful, most dangerous, and most wanted drug lord is further exposed as new evidence is revealed. The Mexican Attorney General's office said that noises could be heard coming from underneath the cell area where Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was being held. But prison officials ignored the sounds. Authorities said Ministry of the Interior officials were being investigated in connection with the permitted escape of the drug trafficker, whose whereabouts are still allegedly unknown. We continue in Mexico. The military continues to be in the spotlight due to more human rights abuses, violence, and the killing of civilians. Our correspondent Glenn Cana has the story.
Their sign says that the only cadaver they want is that of the ruling Institutional Revolutionary Party, or PRI. They criticize the government's militarized drug war strategy for its mounting human rights abuses and its deployment against social protest.
The main message is fear, provoke fear, intimidate us from struggling, that we don't construct a national front of struggle, that we live under a model where every time we go out to the streets, we think we can be kidnapped, killed, or our rights violated.
Mexico's military is accused of being involved in the kidnapping and murder of 7 youth in the state of Zacatecas and a child in Michoacan this past week. Activists say the institution has lost legitimacy as these, among other presumed abuses, go unpunished.
When I was young, I wanted to be a soldier. I had that dream of being a soldier that I respected and admired. Today, I see them with rejection, with a lot of hate for what they are doing. But it's an unfounded hate because the government makes us hate the troops that go and execute, and we don't look up to the commander, the colonel.
Public interest has been high on the case of the death in Michoacan, where the military launched an operation to detain leaders of the communal indigenous police in the town of Santa Maria Ostula. The community has legal recognition of defending itself and its territory.
It is an indigenous municipality that operates under traditional and ancestral uses and customs. That is that through assemblies, they elect their own rural guard. They are responsible of security of the town, responsible of defending their forests, their coast, and their communities.
While the authorities affirm that the communal police leader Semai Berdia was possessing illegal weapons, Ostula residents argue that the army was deployed to silence a critical voice and ultimately defend private interests.
The state provided the weapons. The weapons he had were from the government. But it's not that. What we say about Semei is that he was an impediment to all, the system and its big interests.
While Mexico's National Commission on Human Rights has launched an investigation into the military's involvement in the deaths in Zacatecas and Michoacan, other rights defenders affirm that if there's no political will to tackle impunity, military abuses will continue to rise. Clayton Cantelo Sur, Mexico City.
In the next few hours, Guatemalan justice officials will begin the retrial against dictator Efraín Ríos Montt. The ex-military leader was declared mentally unfit to face a trial for genocide during the 1980s. Ríos Montt had already been found guilty in 2013 of killing close to 1,800 Guatemalans and committing 1,400 human rights violations. The verdict was overturned. His retrial comes a day after his daughter Zoe Ríos Sosa was given the green light to run for president despite a law-bearing relatives of dictators aspiring to head the state. Now to a world news roundup that will begin in Greece. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras' second reform package achieved an overwhelming victory in Parliament.
With 230 votes in favor in the 300-seat chamber, Parliament backed the second package of reforms, paving the way for the start of the talks with the Eurozone for a financial rescue of the country. Tsipras faced less opposition within his leftist Syriza party. His government will now begin negotiations for a third Greek bailout worth about $94 billion. Tsipras hopes to wrap up negotiations by August the 20th, when Greece's next payment is due.
From now on, the government will focus all its efforts on the negotiations so that a deal can be reached.
Despite his success in the Greek parliament, Tsipras slammed conservative Europe's Pyrrhic victory over Athens when addressing his country's parliament. He told lawmakers that his government accepted a compromise after pushing the Greek economy to its limit. Tsipras also denounced the idea of a successful and stable Grexit. The Eurozone forced Tsipras to accept a reform package that includes tax increases on farmers and reduction of social programs.
We accepted a compromise after having tried every way of negotiation. We reached the limits of the Greek economy and the limits of the banking system.
Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi is on a two-day visit to Israel. His main objective is to revive peace talks between the Israeli government and Palestine to end almost 5 decades of conflict since Israel arbitrarily occupied the Palestinian territories. Renzi told the Israeli parliament peace for Jerusalem would only be possible when a two-state project is completed. He defended the Palestinian right to self-determination, but said the Jewish also have a right to their own state. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appeared to agree.
We aspire for peace with our Palestinian neighbors, but my friend Matteo, it has to be a genuine peace, a solid peace, genuine so that as much as the Palestinians ask us to recognize their national rights, they will finally recognize the Jewish people's right for a state of its own in its homeland, the State of Israel.
The flow of migrants who risk their lives at sea fleeing violence and poverty in sub-Saharan Africa, Bangladesh and Syria continues. In the last 24 hours, about 2,000 have been rescued. An Italian Coast Guard rescued about 580 migrants, including more newborn babies, women and children. So far this year, 150,000 migrants have arrived in Europe. In the United States, the white man that killed 9 black people during prayer at a Charleston, South Carolina church faces federal hate crimes and firearm charges that could lead to the death penalty or at least life in prison, according to the U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch. A federal grand jury in South Carolina returned a 33-count indictment against Dylan Roof, but, as on yet, No decision has been made on whether the federal government will seek the death penalty if Roof is convicted.
Football experts and commentators around the world have agreed that Mexico's path to the Gold Cup finals is embarrassing. In their quarterfinal game against Costa Rica, the referee called a penalty after Mexican striker Oribe Peralta threw himself to the ground. In the semifinal game against Panama, officials called two unjustified penalties, giving Mexico the victory. The Mexican coach, Miguel Herrera, admitted foul play. Since its inception in 1991, the Gold Cup has always had Mexico or the U.S. in the final, sometimes both. Many say the tournament is corrupted due to reasons of profit. We continue with football. The U.S. government has handed over to Trinidad and Tobago the formal request to extradite former FIFA Vice President Jack Warner. It is now in the hands of the island nation's authorities to decide whether they will send the former Trinidadian official to the United States to face corruption and wire fraud conspiracy charges. He's part of a major FIFA scandal that shocked the sports world and pushed the football body's president, Joseph Blatter, to resign. More on these on our website, telesurtv.net/English. Thank you for watching and have a good day.